This lens is built for Sony full frame cameras, but this FX30 does not have a full frame sensor. Instead, it has a Super 35 or APS-C size sensor, which is the main reason why it's half the price of the FX3. But they still work together quite well, possibly even better than on full frame cameras. Let me explain. First, just some definitions just so everyone understands what we're actually talking about. That shiny part in the middle is the image sensor, and it's basically equivalent to film, but the main difference is once the light is captured, once the image is captured on the sensor, it is then processed immediately and internally in the cameras. And the sensor sizes that we're going to be talking about today are full frame and then APS-C / Super 35. They mean the same thing. It just has two names. So the APS-C or Super 35 size sensor on this FX30 is 23.5 millimeters across and 15.6 millimeters tall. On full frame sensors, however, they are 36 millimeters across and 24 millimeters tall. That's for a 3x2 sensor, at least. So around that, not every camera is going to be the same, but around that, that's sort of the dimensions that they are. Because of the Sony E-mount system, there's actually hundreds of lenses that would work natively on these cameras without the need of an adapter or anything like that. A lot of them are full frame and a lot of them are Super 35. And there's a few compelling reasons to use full frame lenses on a Super 35 camera like this FX30. Reason number one, as you can see by that red or orange, I guess it's kind of orange, G on there, this is a G Master lens, and Sony doesn't make G Master Super 35 lenses. They only make full frame G Master lenses. So buying full frame lenses, you are able to get usually higher quality lenses, you know, lower apertures potentially, and just better build quality, much more robust and weather sealed and all that sort of stuff. So better quality lenses is the first reason. The second reason is the versatility. I have the Sony FX30 and this is the Sony a7 IV, which is a full frame camera. So when I got the a7 IV, I started buying full frame lenses, and those full frame lenses still work on the FX30. So if you do have both, what's the point of getting Super 35 lenses? Because then you can only use them on one camera. So in my mind, at least for the Sony system, it makes sense to get full frame lenses and just use them on both. And probably the biggest reason is actually these full frame lenses kind of perform better on smaller sensors. And here's why. Most lenses will have a much sharper image in the center, and then as you go out towards the edges, they'll become a little bit softer. You might get a little bit more chromatic aberration and just things that are generally undesirable unless you're going for a certain look on like vintage lenses or something. But generally, lenses will be the best in the middle and the worst are the edges, especially wide open, like with lower apertures. So if you use a smaller sensor, you're cutting out a big chunk of that edge portion where a lot of these issues will occur. And you'll also have things like distortion, like on wide angle lenses. As you can see, my hand is about this big in the middle, but if I move it across, my fingers actually kind of get a bit longer. Not a huge amount, because this is a 20 mil, it's not like a 14 or anything like that, but you still do get that distortion around the edges on these wide angle lenses. So if you cut all that out, it'll look a little bit better than if you're using the entire full frame image circle in the back of this lens. And a lot of lenses, again, especially wide open, you'll have a bit of vignetting. So if you, again, only use a portion of that image circle, you're not going to see that vignetting that's around the edges. So those are the reasons that you should use full frame lenses on APS-C cameras. There's also a few reasons not to. The first con is just the price. Full frame lenses, along with full frame cameras, are much more expensive. So if you don't have a full frame camera, maybe it's not really worth buying full frame lenses, especially if you're not planning on getting a full frame camera ever. If you only have APS-C or Super 35 cameras, maybe just stick to them unless you really want a particular lens, which is also a fair reason. Like if you want a 50mm 1.2, you're not gonna be able to really get that in APS-C. So you're gonna have to get the G Master full frame version, sort of thing. As you can see, these are also quite large. This is 7200 2.8. Full frame lenses, because they have to be bigger because they have more glass, they're covering a large area of the sensor because the sensor's bigger. They're gonna be bigger, they're gonna be heavier. So that's another, I guess, downside for a lot of people. Your camera bag is just gonna be heavier and, you know, just carrying it around, you'll notice it. And one of the things that I just sort of like the least about Super 35 is the fact that I have to calculate the crop and deal with having that crop compared to full frame. Because I'm using both full frame and APS-C, it's not gonna look the same at the same focal length. For example, this 20mm, while wide enough to, let's say, vlog on full frame, 30mm, not quite wide enough to vlog on this camera right here. And same goes the other way. This 7200, if I want to be able to go as wide as 70, I can't on this. It's equivalent to a 105, so it's tighter. So you just need to deal with it being tighter. So if you do have both full frame and APS-C cameras, the only other option really is to buy both full frame and APS-C lenses and maybe get cheaper APS-C lenses for your APS-C camera if that's not, you know, your main camera sort of thing. Because if you try to use an APS-C lens on a full frame camera, you will get a crazy vignette, which you can crop out in post and whatever, but like, then you're losing resolution. But cameras like the A7 IV, the A7 R5, the A1, they do have that APS-C crop mode built in. So if you do want to use APS-C lenses on cameras like these, then you can put an APS-C lens on there and then just go into the crop mode and it's perfect. It will work the exact same as it would on a native APS-C camera. But if you do that, then you're losing the benefits of full frame. If you prefer to have that full frame look, you better buy full frame lenses. But that'll be all for this one. Let me know what you think about using full frame lenses on APS-C cameras. Would you get them if you didn't have a full frame camera as well? Or are there any APS-C or Super 35 lenses that you just have to get no matter what, even if you can't use it on your full frame camera? Let me know. While you're in the comments, do all the other things down there, and I'll see you next time. Go watch that video. Okay, bye.